The caregiver they hired showed up with bottles of pills. "Your son told me to keep you sleepy all day," she whispered nervously. I smiled, paid her double to tell me everything, and fired her on the spot. The next morning, my son walked in expecting to find me confused and weak. Instead, he found me sitting with my lawyer, and his face went white. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. She stood in my kitchen holding 2 identical white bottles. The morning light caught the plastic, making them gleam. Her knuckles were white around them. I had just poured my tea. "Mrs. Sterling," she said. Her voice was a thin wire. "He pays me double." I set the china pot down on the counter. The click was precise. "Who pays you double for what, Chloe?" She would not look at me. She stared at the bottles in her hand as if they were alive. "Your son, Mr. Sterling. He pays me my normal rate, and then the same again in cash, in an envelope, every Friday." I waited. The clock above the sink ticked. I could smell the bergamot from my tea. "The extra is for following special instructions." She finally lifted her eyes. They were wide, damp. "For giving you these." She raised one bottle. "These are your real blood pressure pills, the ones Dr. Evans prescribed." Then she raised the other. These are something else. He gave them to me. They're stronger. Sedatives, I think. He said they were for your anxiety. He said you wouldn't take them if you knew." The room did not spin. It became very still, very clear. Every detail sharpened. The pattern on the linoleum, the dust motes in the sunbeam, the tremor in her lower lip. "What are the instructions?" My own voice sounded distant, calm. "To switch them, to give you the strong ones twice a day, to tell him if you seemed foggy, sluggish, if you stumbled. He said it was for your own safety." A tear escaped and tracked down her cheek. She made no move to wipe it. "He said we might need to talk about next steps, about you needing more care, maybe somewhere supervised." I understood then. It was not a lightning bolt of understanding. It was a slow, cold flood filling me from the feet up. It was the final piece of a puzzle I had refused to assemble. Marcus's recent visits, his cloying concern. His comments about the stairs being steep, the garden being too much work. His questions about my will, about the deed to the house, always framed as prudent planning. It was not concern. It was a blueprint. I looked at this young woman in my kitchen. She was a child, a pawn. My anger did not rush toward her. It flowed past her toward its true source, a dark river finding its course. "How long?" I asked. 2 weeks. I haven't done it, not once. I just filled the bottles like he said and pretended. But he's checking. He asked me yesterday if you'd been napping more." Her words tumbled out now, a confession she could no longer hold. "I can't. I need the job, but I can't do this. You're not confused. You're the sharpest person I know." I walked to the kitchen table. My legs functioned. I pulled out my checkbook from the drawer where I keep the bills. I wrote a check. The pen moved smoothly. I tore it out and held it toward her. "What is this?" she whispered. $1,000 for the truth, and for your silence." She stared at the check as if it were a snake. "I don't want." "You will take it," I said. The tone was my old school principal tone, the one that allowed no argument. "You will walk out of this house. You will not answer my son's calls. If he tracks you down, you will say I became suspicious and fired you. You will say nothing about this conversation. Is that clear?" She nodded, a quick, jerky motion. She took the check. "Now," I said, "give me both bottles, leave your key on the counter, and go." She placed the bottles on the table. The faint rattle of pills was the only sound. She fumbled in her pocket, produced the key, laid it beside them. She looked at me one last time, her face a mess of shame and relief. Then she turned and left. I heard the front door open and shut, a soft, final click. I did not move. I stood at the table looking at the 2 white bottles. I picked up the one from my son. I opened it. The pills inside were small, round, and off-white color. They were not mine. I closed the bottle. The hurt arrived then, not as a sob, but as a physical pressure behind my sternum, a crushing weight. My son, my only child. The boy I read stories to, whose fevers I stayed up through, whose college tuition I paid by taking extra summer work. The man I welcomed into my home, trusting him with the spare key. He did not want to wait for his inheritance. He wanted to manufacture the need for it. A few weeks of drugged confusion, a doctor's note, a petition for guardianship. I saw it all, laid out with a financier's cold logic. The tears came, silent, hot streaks down my face. I let them fall. I did not wipe them away. I watched them darken the wood of the table. This was the betrayal. This was the fact. The emotion was a luxury I could not afford for long. I had cried for my husband. That grief was pure. This was different. This was poison, and it required an antidote. I took a deep, shuddering breath, then another. The tears slowed. I wiped my face with the heel of my hand, a practical gesture. I picked up the bottle of authentic pills and put them in my pocket. I took the other bottle, my son's bottle, and I carried it to the sink. I emptied the pills into the disposal. I turned on the water and flipped the switch. The machine growled, a brutal, grinding sound. It lasted only seconds. I turned it off. The silence returned. I looked around my kitchen. The morning sun was higher now, bright on the cheerful yellow walls I had painted myself. The clock ticked. My tea was still on the counter, growing cold. He thought I was a frail thing to be managed, a problem to be solved. He had forgotten who he was dealing with. He had forgotten the woman who built a life from nothing, who commanded classrooms of restless teenagers, who navigated budget cuts and school boards. He saw gray hair and a quiet house. He did not see the mind inside, which was, at that very moment, shifting gears, moving from shock to assessment, from heartbreak to strategy. The grief was not gone. It was a cold stone in my gut, but it was now a component of the plan, a fuel. I walked to the window above the sink. I looked out at my garden. The azaleas were blooming. I had planted them with Robert, the first spring after we bought this house. Our shared project, our shared future. Marcus was not just trying to take my money. He was trying to take my past. He was trying to invalidate my entire life's work. I turned from the window. The cold stone settled. The plan began to form, not in words but in instincts. First, secure the perimeter. Second, gather intelligence. Third, choose the battlefield. I picked up the cold teacup. I poured the contents down the sink. I would make a fresh pot. And then I would make a phone call. The war was quiet. It would be fought in this house with papers and words and the unassailable truth. He had started this, but I would finish it. And he would learn too late the price of double. The tea was steeping when I picked up the phone. The scent of bergamot was familiar, a small anchor. I dialed a number I knew by heart, when I hadn't called for anything more serious than a book club cancellation in years. It rang twice. Evelyn Sterling, to what do I owe the pleasure before 10 a.m.? Beverly Jackson's voice was a low, warm alto, edged with its usual dry humor. Beverly, I said her name, and the professional calm I had maintained for Chloe fractured, just for a second. A single crack in the veneer. The humor vanished from her tone. What's wrong? It was not a question. I pictured her in her own kitchen, probably with a legal pad already materializing beside her coffee cup. I need your help, in a professional capacity. My son is trying to have me declared incompetent. The silence on the line was absolute for 3 full seconds. Marcus, she said the name like a diagnosis. Explain from the beginning. I did. I kept my voice level, recounting Chloe's visit, the 2 bottles, the offered double pay, the sedatives, the suggested next steps. I did not cry. I presented the facts as if I were summarizing a case file for her. When I finished, there was another silence, this one simmering. That little bastard, she breathed, the words tight with fury. I heard the scrape of a chair. Are you safe right now? He doesn't know I know. Chloe is gone. I have the evidence bottle empty now. I have her statement informally. Good. First, you change your locks. Today, not tomorrow. Do you have a reputable company? I was about to call one. Call Secure Home. Ask for David. Tell him I sent you. He'll be there within 2 hours. Get deadbolts on all exterior doors. Then you need cameras, discreet ones, at the front door, back door, and in the main living area. Audio capable. David can handle that too. Tell him it's a priority job, bill it to my office for now. I wrote it down on the notepad by the phone. Secure Home, David, deadbolts, cameras with audio. Second, Beverly continued, her mind racing ahead, You gather every important document you have: deed to the house, your will, financial statements, investment portfolios, the last 3 years of tax returns, medical records, especially anything from Dr. Evans showing your sound health. Create a file. I will be there this afternoon to review it. This afternoon. Yes, I'm clearing my schedule. This is what we do now, Evie. We build a fortress of paper and law. He thinks he's playing a financial game. He's about to learn he's in a courtroom without a lawyer. I could hear the grim satisfaction in her voice. It was a lifeline. Are you all right, truly? I looked at my hand holding the receiver. It was steady. I am functional. The feeling will come later, I assume. Let it come, but do your tasks first. Grieve on a schedule. Right now you have work to do. Call David. I'll see you at 2. The line went dead. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. The plan was no longer a vague instinct. It had structure. It had a commander. I took a sip of the fresh tea. Then I picked up the phone book and found the number for Secure Home. David arrived in 90 minutes. He was a broad, quiet man in a uniform shirt. He did not ask questions. He said, "Ms. Jackson said you need a fortress." I simply nodded and let him work. For the next hour, the sounds of drilling and measured footsteps filled my house. I stayed in my small home office, a converted sunroom. I pulled the heavy fireproof box from the closet shelf. I began removing folders. The deed was there, a single sheet of paper with mine and Robert's names on it from decades ago. Our will, updated after his death, leaving everything to Marcus, with Beverly as the executor. The irony was a sharp, cold needle in my chest. I spread the documents on my desk. Bank statements showed a comfortable balance, the result of a lifetime of direct deposits and careful saving. Investment accounts I had managed with a conservative, steady hand. My pension paperwork. I made neat stacks. I logged into my medical portal and printed the last 3 visit summaries from Dr. Evans. Each one concluded with phrases like, "Patient is alert and oriented," "Excellent recall," "Managing hypertension effectively." As I worked, the noise from the front door ceased. David appeared in the doorway. "All set, ma'am. 3 new deadbolts, all keyed alike. I've placed 2 cameras, one in the entryway hall ceiling light fixture, one in the bookshelf in the living room facing the main seating area. Both have clear audio pickup. They're motion activated and streamed to a secure app on your phone or tablet. I've taken the liberty of setting up a tablet for you here." He placed a slim device on the corner of my desk. "The feed is live. You can review recordings. No one can access it without this device or the password, which is on this card." He handed me a plain white card. "Ms. Jackson has the backup access codes." I looked at the tablet's screen. It showed a crisp, silent view of my empty living room from a high angle. I could see the armchair where I read, the sofa where Marcus always sat. "Thank you, David." "My pleasure. You need anything else, you call." He gave a short nod and left. I heard the new, solid clunk of the front door locking behind him. The house was quiet again, but it was a different quiet. It was a secured quiet. I looked from the tablet screen to the stacks of paper on my desk. This was my life, reduced to legal-size sheets and digital feeds. This was what he had forced me to do. Beverly arrived precisely at 2, carrying a leather briefcase and a bakery bag. "Fuel," she said, placing the bag on the dining table, now cleared of its usual cloth. She embraced me, a quick, hard hug that communicated everything words could not. Then she stepped back, professional again. "Show me." For 2 hours we worked. She examined every document, asking concise questions. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. She had me recount the conversation with Chloe again, prompting for exact phrases. "We need her on record," Beverly said finally, capping her pen. "A sworn affidavit, but that can come later. For now, this," she gestured to the piles, "combined with the fact pattern is more than enough to establish his intent. The attempted drugging is the key. It shows premeditation toward incapacity." "What do we do?" I asked. "We let him make his next move. He'll contact you soon, wondering why Chloe isn't reporting in. He'll likely come here. And when he does, he will walk into a room where the balance of power has permanently shifted." She looked at me, her gaze direct. "You understand what that means, Evie? You cannot show him an ounce of weakness, no mother's tears. He forfeited that right. You show him the principle. You show him the client. You are a fact he must now contend with. I nodded. The cold stone inside me had solidified. It was no longer just grief, it was ballast. I understand. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small, sleek digital recorder. Keep this with you. If he comes before we're ready, you record every word. Check your state's consent law. We're a one-party state, so you're fine. Just press record. I took the device. It was light, almost insignificant. And then, Beverly said, gathering her copies of my documents, we present him with the consequences of his choices. We offer him a narrow path that does not lead to prison, but leads him away from you, permanently. After she left, I sat at the table for a long time. The late afternoon sun slanted across the floor. I picked up the tablet David had left. I tapped the screen. The live feed of my living room appeared. I watched the empty room. I watched the light move across the carpet. I was waiting. But for the first time since Chloe spoke, I was not afraid of what would walk through the door. I was prepared for it. The fortress was built. The evidence was gathered. The trap, though I did not yet know its final shape, was now set. All that was missing was the prey. The morning of Beverly's return dawned clear and cool. I performed my routines with mechanical precision: shower, dress, breakfast. The house felt different. The new locks were a solid, reassuring weight on the doors. The tablet on the kitchen counter showed 2 green lights for the cameras, idle but watching. I was waiting, but I was no longer passive. I was a fixture in my own home, rooted and ready. Beverly arrived at 10, her briefcase heavier this time. She also carried a small paper bag from the pharmacy. We need to be thorough, she said by way of greeting, placing both on the dining table, which was once again cleared for business. How did you sleep? Adequately, I said. It was true. The emotional exhaustion had been profound, leading to a deep, dreamless state. I had woken with the same cold clarity. Good, now we proceed. She opened her briefcase. She had organized my documents into clear plastic sleeves within a binder. She placed a fresh legal pad next to it. First, we need to get Chloe's formal statement. I've drafted an affidavit. It's simple, just the facts of her employment, the offer from Marcus, the instructions regarding the medication. I will have a notary from my office meet her later today to execute it. She's agreed. She answered my call last night. She's frightened, but she agreed. She's at her sister. I had used the same firm, principal's tone on the phone. It was effective. Perfect. Beverly made a note. Now the physical evidence, the bottle. She pointed to the empty white container, which sat in the center of the table like an exhibit. I handed it to her. She examined it, noting the lack of a prescription label. And you are certain these were the pills? She opened the pharmacy bag and withdrew a small bottle of over-the-counter sleep aids. They were small, round, and off-white. I am certain. They looked identical to these. She poured a few of the sleep aids onto a napkin. We will state that you identified them as a potent sedative based on appearance and Chloe's testimony. The specific pharmaceutical is less important than the intent to administer an unprescribed, mind-altering substance. She photographed the bottle and the pills beside it with her phone. The chain of custody is clean. You received them from Chloe. They've been in your possession. Next, she opened the binder. Now, the financial motive. You told me last time he's been pressuring you to sell. Let's document that. She clicked her pen. I need you to recall as precisely as possible every conversation in the last 6 months where Marcus discussed your house, your finances, or your health. I closed my eyes. The conversations, which I had dismissed as nagging, now took on a sinister clarity. 3 months ago, over dinner here, he said the market was at its peak, that a house this size was a burden and a liability. He suggested a luxury condo community with on-site care options. I said I wasn't interested. Beverly wrote rapidly. Date. I'd have to check my calendar. A Saturday in early March. We'll narrow it. Continue. A month later on the phone, he asked if I had reviewed the estate packet he mailed. It was information about living trusts. He said it would avoid probate. I told him my will with you was sufficient. Good, that shows consistent pressure, and the medical angle. He called Dr. Evans's office last month. He told me he was just checking in on my behalf, being proactive. He said the receptionist mentioned I was due for a cognitive screening. I was not. I called and confirmed it. Beverly's lips tightened into a thin line. She wrote, "Attempted to manipulate medical narrative." She looked up. "This is a pattern. Pressure to liquidate assets, fabricate a need for care, and then chemically induce the symptoms that would justify that care. It's a textbook predatory play, just within a family." Hearing her say it so clinically made it both more real and more grotesque. "What is the plan, Beverly? We have the evidence. What do we do with it?" She leaned back. "We confront him, not with screaming, but with silence, with facts. He will come here expecting to find a woman becoming frail and confused. Instead, he will find you and me in this room. We will present the affidavit, the photos, the timeline of his pressure. We will outline the legal consequences, attempted elder abuse, fraud, possible criminal charges. We will then offer him a single, narrow exit. Which is? He signs a legally binding agreement. He renounces, in perpetuity, any claim to this house or your financial assets. He agrees to stay away from you unless explicitly invited. He agrees to attend mandatory financial counseling. I'll have a colleague draft it as a stipulation. In return, you do not press criminal charges. You do not file a police report. You do not expose him to his professional community. The finality of it was a vacuum, sucking the air from the room. It was the disowning of my only child, formalized in ink. And if he refuses? Beverly's gaze was unwavering. Then we file the police report with everything we have. We notify Adult Protective Services. We notify the state bar, as his actions could constitute financial exploitation. His career in finance would not survive the scandal. He would likely face prosecution. The choice is his: a clean, quiet but total severance, or a public, messy destruction. I looked at my hands folded on the table. They were my mother's hands. They had graded papers, planted flowers, comforted a small boy. Now they were part of a negotiation for his exile. He will be angry. He will say terrible things. "He will," Beverly said, her voice softening a fraction. "And you will not react. You will let the facts sit there. You will let the choice sit there. His anger will have no target but himself. You are not a mother in that moment, Evie. You are a party to a settlement. Can you do that?" I saw the empty pill bottle. I saw the image of the substitute pills on the napkin. I felt the cold stone of betrayal, now polished into a tool. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." "Then we are ready." Beverly closed the binder. "All we need is for him to take the bait. Has he called?" "Not yet, but he will. Chloe's silence will worry him. He'll need to assess the situation himself." "Good, when he does, you are vague. You are slightly distracted. You invite him over. You set the stage." She handed me the small digital recorder from her pocket. "Wear something with a pocket. Turn this on before he arrives. Capture everything." I took the recorder. It felt heavier than yesterday. "And you will be here." "I will be in the kitchen, out of sight, until the moment he sits down. Then I will join you. His shock will be part of the strategy." She stood, gathering her things. "I'll have the affidavit executed today and draft the agreement. We'll review it tomorrow. For now, rest. Keep your phone close." After she left, I did not rest. I went to the living room. I sat in my armchair, the one that did not face the camera. I looked at the sofa where Marcus would sit. I practiced my expression in the reflection of the dark television screen. Not anger, not sadness. A neutral, expectant calm. The calm of a principal about to meet a student who has been called to the office for a very serious offense. The outcome is already decided. The meeting is merely a formality. The trap was not just set. It was polished. The mechanism was loaded. All that remained was for the door to open. The call came on Sunday morning, just as I was finishing my coffee in the garden. The phone in the kitchen rang, its sound cutting through the quiet hum of bees in the azaleas. I let it ring 3 times. I set my cup down on the wrought iron table, the china clicking softly. I walked inside at a measured pace. I picked up the receiver on the 4th ring. "Hello." "Mom, it's me." Marcus's voice was smooth, coated with a concern that now felt like a film of oil. "How are you feeling today?" I allowed a slight pause, just a beat too long. "Marcus, I'm fine, a little tired, I suppose." I kept my tone light, vague. Tired, did you not sleep well? His inquiry was pointed, a hunter checking his trap. Oh, it comes and goes. My mind was just racing a bit last night. Nothing serious. I leaned against the kitchen counter, looking out at the garden. My face, I knew, was a blank. My voice performed its part. I've been trying to reach Chloe, he said, the segue casual. She's not answering her phone. I wanted to check on how you've been this week. Chloe, I infused the name with a hint of confusion. Oh, she's not here anymore. I let her go. Silence, then a carefully controlled, you let her go. Why? She was unsatisfactory, forgetful. She misplaced my good shears last week, and she seemed jumpy. It made me uneasy. I kept my explanation domestic, petty. The kind of minor grievance he would expect from a woman becoming fussy and irrational. I decided I didn't need the help after all. It's simpler on my own. Another pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, recalculating. His pawn was off the board, but the queen, the target, was still in play, seemingly more vulnerable than ever. Mom, I'm not sure that's wise. We talked about you needing consistent support for your safety. I'm perfectly safe, Marcus. It's just me and the house. It's quiet. I let my words drift slightly. Quiet isn't always safe, he said, the paternalistic tone grating against my ear. Listen, I think I should come by, check on things myself, make sure you're managing. How about tomorrow morning? The bait is taken. I closed my eyes for a second. Tomorrow? Well, I suppose that would be all right. I don't have any plans. Good, I'll come around 10. We can have a coffee, talk things through, maybe discuss some better care options. His voice had regained its confident, managing tone. He was back on script, believing the narrative of my decline was still intact. That sounds nice, dear. 10 o'clock, I'll be here. You take it easy today, Mom. Don't overdo it in the garden. I won't. Thank you for calling, Marcus. I hung up the phone. I stood perfectly still for a full minute, listening to the silence of the house. Then I picked up the small digital recorder from the counter where I had placed it this morning in anticipation. I pressed the stop button. I played back the last 30 seconds. Our voices were clear. His condescending concern. My vague, slightly confused acquiescence. It was perfect. I called Beverly. She answered on the first ring. He called. And? He's coming tomorrow at 10. He took the bait. He thinks I'm alone and deteriorating. I heard the rustle of papers. Excellent. The agreement is drafted. I'll bring it with me tonight for a final review. How do you feel? Calm, I said, and it was largely true. The high-strung tension of the first days had settled into a low, steady hum of purpose. I am ready. Good, I'll be at your house at 9:30 tomorrow. I'll park around the corner. You let him in. You get him settled in the living room. I will enter exactly 2 minutes after he does. Let him begin the conversation. Let him reveal his intent. Understood. After the call, I went about my Sunday. I watered the garden. I made a simple lunch. I listened to a jazz record, the notes filling the spaces in the quiet house. Every action felt deliberate, part of the performance's rehearsal. I was not just living my day, I was preparing the set. In the evening, Beverly came over. She brought the drafted agreement. It was 5 pages long, dense with legal terminology. She walked me through each clause. The renunciation of all claims to the property and assets. The agreement to stay away, defined as no contact unless initiated by me in writing. The mandate for 6 months of financial counseling with a therapist she had already vetted. The confidentiality clause, binding him to silence about the terms. It's severe, she said, watching me read. It is meant to be. It is a wall. He either agrees to live on his side of it or he faces the legal storm. I signed the line where it said principal. My signature was firm, unchanged from 100 school documents. Beverly notarized it with her own stamp. The document was now real. It waited. After she left, I prepared for the next day. I chose my clothing, a simple but elegant navy dress, a single strand of pearls, armor of a different kind. I placed the digital recorder in the dress's pocket. I checked the tablet. The cameras were active, their feeds a silent vigil. I went to bed at my usual time. Sleep did not come immediately. I lay in the dark and thought not of the boy he had been, but of the man he had become. A man who saw a home filled with memory as a line item on a balance sheet. A man who saw a mother's independence as an obstacle. The love I had for that boy was a separate thing now, locked away in a room of its own. It would ache later. Tonight it was quiet. Tomorrow he would walk through my new, sturdy front door. He would expect to find a weakening woman in a house he was preparing to sell. He would find something else entirely. The stage was set. The actors knew their roles. I finally slept, a deep and untroubled sleep because the waiting was over. The confrontation had a time, 10 o'clock. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 o'clock. The chime echoed through the quiet house. I was seated in the living room armchair, my hands folded in my lap. I had been sitting there for 20 minutes practicing stillness. I rose and walked to the front door. Through the side window, I saw him standing on the porch, dressed in a crisp, expensive-looking polo shirt and khakis. He held a paper bag from a local bakery, a prop of filial care. I smoothed my dress, took a slow breath, and opened the door. "Mom," he leaned in to kiss my cheek. His cologne was sharp, unfamiliar. "You look well." "Thank you, Marcus. Come in." I stepped back, allowing him entry. His eyes did a quick, automatic scan of the entryway. I saw them pause just for a fraction of a second on the new deadbolt. He said nothing. "I brought your favorite," he said, holding up the bag as he walked past me into the hall. "Almond croissants." "That was thoughtful. Shall we have coffee in the living room? It's all ready." My voice was pleasant, steady. "Sure." He led the way, as he always did in this house, assuming the lead. He placed the bakery bag on the coffee table and settled into the center of the sofa, his usual spot. He leaned back, crossing one ankle over his knee, a picture of casual control. "So, tell me what's been going on. I've been worried since our call." I sat back in my armchair, facing him. The tablet was off, but the camera in the bookshelf was live. The recorder in my pocket was on. "Oh, not much. The days are quiet. I've been puttering in the garden." "That's good," he said, but his tone was dismissive. His gaze was assessing, clinically so. He was looking for signs, slurred speech, unfocused eyes, confusion. "But Mom, we need to talk seriously about Chloe and about the future. You letting her go like that, it was impulsive. You need consistent care. I've been doing some research. There's an excellent assisted living community just 20 minutes from here. It has everything, grounds, activities, full medical staff on site. It would take all this burden off your hands." He gestured vaguely at the room, at the house itself. I tilted my head slightly. "A burden, this house." "You know what I mean. The upkeep, the stairs, the isolation. It's not safe for a woman your age to be alone like this." His voice took on that patient, explaining tone. "With the equity from this place, the move would be financially seamless. You'd be comfortable, and I'd know you were safe." He was moving quickly, emboldened by what he perceived as my vulnerability. He thought the sedatives had been administered. He thought the groundwork was laid. "That's a very big decision, Marcus," I said, keeping my voice mild. "I would need to think about it." "There's nothing to think about," he said, a hint of exasperation breaking through. "It's the logical next step. We can start the paperwork this week. I can have a realtor come by for an appraisal." The sound of the front door opening cut him off, the distinct, heavy click of the new lock turning. His head snapped toward the hallway, his body going rigid. "Who was that? Are you expecting someone?" "Yes," I said, not moving from my chair. "I believe I am." Footsteps, firm and measured, sounded in the hall. Beverly appeared in the doorway. She was dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her gray hair in its usual precise twist. She carried her leather briefcase. She did not look at me. Her eyes went directly to Marcus. His face changed. The color drained from it, leaving a waxy, pale mask. His ankle slipped from his knee. He sat up straight, his hands gripping the sofa cushions. "Beverly, what are you?" "Hello, Marcus," Beverly said. Her voice was dry, professional. She walked into the room and took the empty armchair beside mine without being asked. She placed her briefcase on the floor beside her. She arranged herself, then looked at him, her expression neutral. "Please, continue. You were discussing the paperwork for the appraisal." Marcus stared. His eyes darted from Beverly's composed face to mine. I met his gaze with the same calm I had maintained since he arrived. The realization began to dawn in his eyes, a slow, terrible dawn. The performance was over. The audience had arrived, and it was not the one he expected. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tighter now. The casual confidence was gone, replaced by a strained confusion. "Mom." "This is a conversation, Marcus," I said. "You were outlining your plans for my future. Beverly is here because she has a professional interest in those plans." He looked at the briefcase. He looked at our postures, two women seated side by side facing him, a united front. His calculations were visible on his face, rapid and panicked. The caregiver was gone. The locks were new. His mother was not groggy. She was preternaturally clear. And Beverly Jackson, retired attorney, was in the living room. He understood, all of it. The blood did not return to his face. He remained pale, his lips slightly parted. The paper bag of croissants sat between us, a pathetic monument to his failed charade. The room was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. He was no longer the son making difficult decisions for a declining parent. He was a man who had walked into a room and found himself outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and exposed. The power did not shift with a shout. It shifted with that silence, with that pallor, with the slow, dawning horror in his eyes. He was on the wrong side of the table now, and he knew it. The silence stretched. It was a tangible thing in the room, thick and heavy. Marcus's eyes were fixed on me, wide with a kind of arrested panic. The performance was over. Now came the testimony. "You were saying," I began, my voice even and clear, "that this house is a burden, that I am not safe, that moving me to an institution is the logical next step." I paused, letting each point hang in the air. "You have been saying variations of this for months. You have also been attempting to manufacture the evidence to support that conclusion." He found his voice, but it was thin, defensive. "Manufacture? Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just concerned. This is classic resistance to necessary change. Beverly, you see it, don't you?" He appealed to her, a desperate gamble. Beverly did not blink. "What I see, Marcus, is a pattern of conduct consistent with financial exploitation and attempted elder abuse. We have compiled a timeline." She opened her briefcase and extracted a single sheet of paper. She did not hand it to him, she read from it. "March 12th, you pressure Evelyn to sell this home, citing market conditions. April 3rd, you contact her physician under false pretenses to inquire about cognitive screenings. April 22nd. You hire a caregiver, Chloe Renfrew, and offer her double payment to secretly administer unprescribed sedative medication to your mother, with instructions to report on her decline." "That's a lie," he snapped, the color flooding back into his face, a blotchy red. "She's confused. That girl is making up stories because she got fired." I reached into the pocket of my dress and removed the small digital recorder. I placed it on the coffee table, next to the forgotten bakery bag. "Chloe is not the only source, Marcus. I have been recording our conversations." I pressed play. The speaker emitted the clear, slightly tinny sound of our phone call from yesterday. His voice. "I've been trying to reach Chloe. I wanted to check on how you've been this week." My vague response. His paternalistic tone. "Quiet isn't always safe. I think I should come by." The recording ended with his promise to come at 10. I pressed stop. The room was quiet again, save for the ragged sound of his breathing. "The attempted drugging is the crucial element," Beverly continued, as if there had been no interruption. She placed two photographs on the table. One was of the empty white pill bottle. The other showed the over-the-counter sleep aids beside it. "Your mother was given this bottle by Ms. Renfrew, who stated it came from you, containing substances meant to induce lethargy and confusion. We have Ms. Renfrew's sworn affidavit to that effect, executed before a notary yesterday." Marcus stared at the photos. His mouth worked, but no sound came out. The architecture of his plan was being dismantled brick by brick before him. "The legal consequences," Beverly said, leaning forward slightly, "are severe. Criminal charges could include attempted elder abuse, fraud, and unauthorized practice of medicine. Civilly, we could sue for financial exploitation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. A report to Adult Protective Services would trigger an immediate investigation. A report to your professional licensing bodies, given your field, would likely result in suspension pending review. Each sentence was a hammer blow. His shoulders hunched. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw not the scheming financier, but a frightened boy caught in a terrible mistake. The sight of it sent a fresh lance of pain through the cold stone in my chest. I did not let it show. "Why?" The word left my lips before I could stop it. It was the only question from the mother, not the principal. It was the one crack in my facade. He flinched. He looked down at his hands. The debts, they were piling up, bad investments. Leverage, I couldn't see another way out. The house, it's just sitting here. I thought if you were somewhere safe, taken care of, it wouldn't be so bad. I was going to manage everything for you. You were going to erase me, I corrected him, my voice hardening again. You were going to drug me into compliance, sell my life out from under me and pocket the proceeds. You did not see a mother. You saw a portfolio that was underperforming. He had no answer. His excuses were ashes. Beverly took back control of the conversation. We are prepared to offer you a single alternative to legal action. She withdrew the 5-page agreement from her briefcase. She placed it on the table, a dense block of text. This is a legally binding settlement. Its terms are non-negotiable. You will sign it today in our presence. What does it say? He asked, his voice hollow. In summary, she said, you will renounce in perpetuity any and all claim to Evelyn Sterling's property and financial assets. You will agree to no contact unless she initiates it in writing. You will undergo 6 months of mandatory financial counseling with a therapist of our choosing. You will maintain strict confidentiality regarding this matter and this agreement. In return, Evelyn will not pursue criminal or civil charges. This incident will remain a private family matter. He stared at the document as if it were a poisonous creature. You're cutting me off. You cut yourself off, Marcus, I said. The moment you handed that girl those pills, you severed the bond. This, I gestured to the paper, is just the formal acknowledgement. It is the only path that does not lead to your professional and personal ruin. The choice is yours. The confrontation was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was a clinical presentation of facts and their inevitable consequences. The evidence was laid out. The recording, the photos, the affidavit, the law. His betrayal was no longer a secret between us. It was a documented case. And he was the defendant with no defense. The reckoning was quiet and absolute. He stared at the document for a long time. The room was so quiet I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. His earlier panic had subsided into a stunned, hollow silence. He looked from the papers to my face, then to Beverly's, searching for a crack, a hint of flexibility. He found none. You expect me to sign this, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of disbelief. We do, Beverly replied. Her voice was matter-of-fact. She reached into her briefcase once more and placed a sleek black pen on top of the agreement. Today, now, we have a notary public waiting in her vehicle outside. She will witness the signatures and affix her seal immediately. A notary. He repeated the word as if it were foreign. You've thought of everything. We have endeavored to be thorough, I said. You taught me the value of thorough planning, Marcus, in a way. A flicker of something shame perhaps crossed his features. He looked down at the pen. And if I refuse? Then I will leave this house, drive to the police station, and file a formal report with all the evidence we have catalogued, Beverly said. Her tone was conversational, which made the threat more absolute. I will also place calls to Adult Protective Services and the state securities regulator. Your choice is not between a good option and a bad option. It is between a severe, private consequence and a catastrophic, public one. He picked up the pen. He turned it over in his fingers. The silence returned, thick and waiting. I did not rush him. This was his moment to comprehend the full scope of his loss. Not just of money, but of a mother, of a home, of his own identity as a son. Read it, I said. You should understand what you are signing. He let out a short, bitter breath that was almost a laugh. What does it matter? You've won. It matters, I said, my voice firm. I will not have you claim later that you were coerced or that you did not understand. Read the document, Marcus. He picked up the first page. His eyes scanned the dense legal text. I watched his face as he read the clauses. The renunciation of all present and future claims, the no-contact provision, the mandatory counseling. His jaw tightened. He flipped a page, then another. When he finished, he let the pages fall back to the table. "It's a life sentence," he whispered. "It is a consequence," I corrected him. "One you authored." He picked up the pen again, he uncapped it. The sound was a soft click in the still room. He looked at me one last, desperate look. "Mom, I was wrong. I was desperate. Can't we, isn't there another way?" It was the first semblance of an apology, mangled and self-serving as it was. The mother in me, the part that was still locked in that separate room, ached to reach for it. But the principal, the client, the woman who had been targeted, held firm. "The other way was to be my son. You chose not to be. This is the only way left. Sign the paper, Marcus." His shoulders slumped. All the fight, all the calculation left him. He was just a man in a too-crisp polo shirt, defeated. He bent over the table. He placed the tip of the pen on the signature line next to his printed name. For a second, he hesitated, the nib hovering. Then he signed. The sound of the pen moving across the paper was dry, precise. It was not a dramatic flourish. It was a slow, deliberate drag of ink. He signed on the first page, then the second, then the third where indicated. He initialed every clause. His signature was smaller than I remembered, cramped. When he was finished, he recapped the pen and set it down. He did not push the papers toward us. He simply leaned back, his hands falling into his lap, empty. Beverly stood. She gathered the signed agreement neatly. "Wait here," she said, and left the room. We heard the front door open and close. Marcus did not look at me. He stared at a point on the carpet between his feet. Beverly returned 2 minutes later. The document now bore a large, official stamp and the notary's signature in blue ink. She separated the copies. She slid one across the coffee table to Marcus. "This is your copy. The terms are effective immediately. You will be contacted within 48 hours with the information for your mandated counselor. Your first appointment must be scheduled within the week. Failure to comply with any term will result in the immediate voiding of this agreement and the commencement of legal proceedings." He looked at his copy but did not pick it up. It was just paper. It was his sentence. "You should go now," I said. He lifted his head. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. He nodded, a slow, mechanical motion. He stood up. He moved as if his joints were stiff. He looked around the living room at the bookshelves, the photographs, the garden visible through the window. He was seeing it for what it was, a place he was now barred from, a history he had exiled himself from. He walked to the hallway. He paused at the front door, his hand on the new deadbolt. He did not turn around. He opened the door, stepped through, and closed it softly behind him. There was no slam, just the definitive click of the lock engaging. I listened to the sound of his car starting in the driveway, the engine fatting as he drove away. The house settled back into its quiet. The agreement, my copy, lay on the table next to the cold bakery bag and the silent recorder. The pen was beside it. It was done. The legal resolution was secured. The pen had been put to paper. The war was over. I had won. And the victory in that moment tasted only of dust and finality. The click of the door was the period at the end of the sentence. The house absorbed the sound and returned a deeper quiet. I did not move from my chair. Beverly stood by the fireplace, watching me. The signed agreement was in her hand. The evidence of the morning, the recorder, the photos, the bakery bag, still littered the coffee table. "I'll give you some time," Beverly said, her voice low. She gathered her briefcase and the copies of the agreement. She placed the recorder and the photos inside. She picked up the bakery bag. "I'll dispose of this. Do you want me to stay later?" I shook my head. "No, thank you. I'll be all right." She hesitated, then nodded. She leaned down and kissed the top of my head, a firm, quick pressure. "You were magnificent. Call me any time." She walked out. I heard the door open and close again, more gently this time. And then I was alone. The quiet was not peaceful. It was a vast, hollow space. All the strategic energy, the focused calm I had sustained for days evaporated. It left behind a profound fatigue, a weight in my bones. I looked at the empty sofa where he had sat. I looked at the space on the carpet where he had stood, pale and broken. The confrontation was over. The victory was secured. Now came the feeling. It started as a tremor in my hands, which were still folded in my lap, then a tightness in my throat. I had not allowed myself to cry in front of him. I had not allowed myself to grieve while there was work to do. Now there was no work, only the result. I stood up. My legs were unsteady. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty driveway. The space where his car had been was just asphalt, stained with a few drops of oil. A normal, empty driveway on a Monday morning. I thought of him as a child. The memory was not a flood, but a single, clear image. Marcus at 7 with a scraped knee sitting on this very living room floor. I was cleaning the cut, my hands steady, his small face screwed up in effort not to cry. "Be brave," I had said. "It's just a little hurt." He had nodded, trusting me completely. I had just cleaned a different kind of wound. I had applied the antiseptic of the law and the bandage of severance. And he had not been brave. He had been guilty. The little boy was gone, replaced by a stranger who saw me as a transaction. The tears came then. They were silent, relentless. They streamed down my face without sobs, a steady leakage of a pain too deep for sound. I cried for the son I had lost long before today. I cried for the betrayal, not as a concept, but as a visceral reality. The fact that my own child had wished me into confusion and dependency. I cried for the sheer, ugly waste of it all. I did not wipe the tears away. I let them fall onto the front of my navy dress, darkening the fabric. I stood at the window until the storm passed, until the tears slowed and then stopped. The hollow feeling remained, but it was cleaner now, scoured out. I turned from the window. I looked at the room, the scene of the battle. It needed to be reclaimed. I walked to the coffee table. I picked up the black pen he had used to sign his life out of mine. I put it in the drawer of the side table. I smoothed the lace cloth on the table, aligning it properly. I went to the kitchen. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The mundane action was an anchor. While the water heated, I took a cloth and wiped the already clean counter. I put my teacup from this morning into the dishwasher. I made a pot of tea. I carried it to the living room on a tray with a single cup. I sat in my armchair, not the one I had used during the confrontation, but the one by the window that looked onto the garden. I poured the tea. The steam rose in a gentle curl. I sipped. The warmth spread through my chest. I looked at my garden. The azaleas were still blooming. A robin hopped across the grass. The world outside was continuing, indifferent and beautiful. The grief was not gone. It was a part of me now, a new layer, but it was separate from my function. I had done what needed to be done. I had protected my home, my autonomy, my legacy. I had faced the betrayal and contained its damage. The cost had been my only child. That was a permanent subtraction. But I was still here, in my house, with my tea, with my mind clear and my own. The exhaustion was still there, a heavy blanket, but beneath it something else stirred, not happiness, not relief. It was a simple, unadorned recognition I am still standing. The battle is over. The house is quiet. It is my quiet. I finished my tea. I set the cup down on the tray. I took a deep, slow breath, filling my lungs. I straightened my shoulders. I had allowed myself to bend under the weight of the feeling. Now I straightened. There would be things to do tomorrow. Legal follow-up with Beverly. Perhaps finding a legitimate, trustworthy companion for actual help, not sabotage. A call to my book club to reschedule our meeting. The garden needed weeding. For now, I sat. I let the quiet be just quiet, not an absence, but a presence. My own presence. In my own home. The victory was bitter, but it was complete. And for the first time since Chloe whispered in my kitchen, I was alone without being afraid of it. I was simply alone. And that, for the moment, was enough. A week later, the house held the sound of laughter. It was a foreign sound at first, one I had to adjust to like a familiar song played in a new key. My book club was meeting, not at Martha's house as originally scheduled, but in my garden. I had called and suggested it, a reclaiming. The morning was bright. I set out the folding table and chairs on the patio. I made iced tea and a lemon pound cake. The simple, ritual actions of hostessing were a balm. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. It was not a sound that made me tense anymore. I checked the tablet out of habit, a woman's face, smiling, holding a book, and went to answer. Martha, Grace, and Louise filed in, their greetings warm and brimming with the usual chatter about traffic and grandchildren. They brought the normalcy of the outside world with them, and I let it wash over me. "Your garden is spectacular this year, Evelyn," Martha said, settling into a chair with a contented sigh. "It's the perfect spot." "It feels good to be out here," I said and meant it. We talked about the book for a while, a historical novel about resilience. The discussion was lively. My contributions felt natural again. My mind was present, not split between conversation and strategy. For an hour, I was just a woman among friends, talking about a story. During a lull, while Grace refilled her glass, Louise looked at me, her eyes kind. "We were all so sorry to hear about your trouble with Marcus, dear. Beverly gave us the bare bones. Just that there was a falling out and he won't be around. That must be so hard." The table quieted. They were my friends of 30 years. They knew the weight of a son's absence. I took a sip of my tea. The cold liquid was clear, bracing. "It was necessary," I said, my voice even. "He made choices that made a relationship impossible. I am prioritizing my peace now." I offered no details. They asked for none. They simply nodded, a collective understanding passing between them. It was support, not pity. "Good for you," Martha said firmly. "Peace is a precious commodity at our age, not to be traded." The conversation moved on. The cake was praised. The sun was warm on our shoulders. The sound of our talk was a gentle hum in the garden. I looked at their faces, etched with their own lives and losses, and felt a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with blood. After they left, the quiet they left behind was companionable, not hollow. I was clearing the plates when the doorbell rang again. I checked the tablet. A woman in her late 50s, with a calm expression and a neat bag over her shoulder, stood on the step. Clara. I had interviewed her 2 days prior. A retired library assistant, she helped a few older clients with errands, light housekeeping, and companionship. Her references were impeccable. Most importantly, when I laid out my expectations, 3 mornings a week, no medical care, just assistance, she had nodded and said, "I'm here to help you live your life, not to run it." I opened the door. Clara, right on time. "Hello, Mrs. Sterling. It's a lovely day," she said, stepping inside. She did not look around with assessing eyes. She simply waited. "I was just finishing up in the garden. Would you mind helping me bring the dishes to the kitchen? Then I have a list of errands, if that's all right." "Of course, that's what I'm here for." We worked side by side, clearing the patio. She was efficient and quiet. She asked practical questions about where things belonged. There was no false cheer, no condescension. She treated me like a competent employer. When the kitchen was tidy, I gave her the list. The post office, the grocery store for a few specific items, the pharmacy for my legitimate prescription refill. I handed her cash and a reusable bag. "I should be back within the hour and a half," she said, checking the list. "Take your time, there's no rush." After she left, I remained in the kitchen. I looked at the clean counters, the empty teacups waiting for the dishwasher. The house was in order. My social world had been reaffirmed. My practical needs were being met on my terms. This was the structure of the new chapter. It was built not on family, but on choice, on friendship and hired, respectful help. I walked back out to the garden. The chairs were empty now, pushed back from the table. I sat in my own chair, the one that caught the afternoon sun. I closed my eyes and felt the warmth on my face. The memory of the confrontation, of Marcus's pale, shocked face was still there, but it was a memory. It was filed away. It no longer pulsed with active hurt. This was the aftermath I had secured. Not a dramatic triumph, but a quiet, sustainable peace. A life curated for my own comfort and autonomy. The victory was in the mundane details. A book club meeting held in my garden, a capable woman running my errands without stealth or betrayal, the simple ability to sit in the sun, alone and unafraid. The new chapter was not about forgetting. It was about building a different story around the facts. And as I sat there, listening to the rustle of leaves in the breeze, I understood that the story was mine to write from now on. One deliberate, quiet day at a time. The evening after the book club meeting, I took my tea to the front porch. It was a habit I had neglected during the weeks of strategy and tension. Now I reclaimed it. The wooden rocking chair was worn smooth in places from decades of use. I sat down, the familiar creak of the runners a comfortable sound. The sky was turning, the blue softening into shades of gold and lavender. The neighborhood was quiet, the only sounds the distant bark of a dog and the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. I sipped my tea. The heat was gentle, soothing. I looked at my house from this outside perspective. The white clapboard siding, the black shutters, the porch swing Robert had installed for our 40th anniversary. It was not just a structure. It was a testament. Every window represented a decision, a sacrifice, a moment of joy. The porch light I had left on for a teenage Marcus coming home late. The roof we replaced together after a storm. It was my archive, written in wood and paint and garden soil. My phone, which I had brought out with me, vibrated softly on the small table beside my chair. I looked at the screen, a text message. The name was not saved under Marcus anymore. It was just a number, but I recognized it. The notification glowed in the dimming light. I finished my sip of tea. I placed the cup back on its saucer. I did not reach for the phone immediately. I watched the sky for a full minute, observing the precise gradient of color. Then I picked up the device. I tapped the screen. The message appeared. My first appointment with Dr. Green is scheduled for Thursday at 4 p.m. I have the paperwork. That was all. No greeting, no apology, no request. It was a statement of compliance, an acknowledgement of the first term of the agreement. It was not an olive branch. It was a report from the other side of the wall. I read the words twice. I felt no surge of emotion, no warmth, no renewed anger. It was data. It was evidence that the mechanism we had set in motion was functioning. He was adhering to the contract. That was the point of the contract. I did not reply. There was nothing to say. Any response from me, anger, forgiveness, acknowledgement, would be a thread pulled, a potential opening. I had chosen a clean severance. Silence was the tool that maintained it. I set the phone back down, screen facing the table. I turned my attention back to the house. The last of the sunset's light caught the front window, setting the glass ablaze for a moment with reflected gold. Then the sun dipped below the roofline, and the light became a softer, deeper glow. Clara had left at 3 o'clock, the errands completed, the groceries put away. She would be back on Thursday. The book club was planning our next meeting at Grace's house. Beverly had called this afternoon to confirm that the notarized agreement had been filed with her office and a copy sent to Marcus's mandated counselor. All the administrative loose ends were tied. The quiet was my own. The peace was my own. The safety was my own. They were not gifts. They were possessions I had fought for and won. The cost was etched into me, a permanent line, but the title was clear. I thought of the young woman, Chloe, who had been brave enough to whisper the truth. I hoped she had found another job, one that did not ask her to compromise her conscience. I thought of Beverly, my steadfast general. I thought of my friends in the garden, their laughter a shield against pity. I did not think of the boy on the floor with the scraped knee. That memory was packed away, carefully, in a place where it could not hurt the woman I had to be now. The first star appeared in the violet sky. A light came on in the house across the street. The ordinary world was proceeding with its ordinary evening. I felt my lips curve. It was not a smile of joy. It was not a smile of triumph. It was a small, private, and entirely peaceful expression of recognition. A silent note to myself. You are here. You are whole. The house is yours. The life is yours. I picked up my teacup. It was empty. The warmth had faded from the porcelain. I stood up, the rocking chair settling behind me. I opened the front door. The familiar interior of my home welcomed me, shadowy and still. I stepped inside. I turned and closed the door. I engaged the deadbolt. The solid asterisk thunk was a satisfying sound, a final punctuation. I walked through the dark hallway to the kitchen to rinse my cup. The motions were automatic, ingrained. This was my domain. These were my rules. The story of the betrayal was over. The story of my legacy, secured and solitary, was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, the next page was blank, and I was content to leave it that way for now.